ES Audio.
The British countryside, rolling fields, animals grazing, an idyllic, peaceful place that's also a hotbed of risk-taking.
Research will tell you what people were thinking yesterday. Research will tell you what people are thinking today. But research cannot tell you what people are thinking tomorrow. You need to have enough courage with your idea to go for it, but to have the belief that people will eventually follow.
Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones is the founder of the Black Farmer food range, an immigrant from a poverty-stricken family who came to the UK as a young boy and worked his way up to own a piece of England, with a few detours along the way.
I left school at 16 without any qualifications. I could hardly read and write. I joined the army. In those days, if you were a black guy with attitude, you were either going to get moulded and you'd do as you're told, or you were going to get your head kicked in and you get kicked out of the army. So I got kicked out of the army.
I'm David Marsden from the Evening Standard. Wilfred will be appearing at our SME EXPO at London's Excel on April 25th and 26th, along with people like Deborah Meaden, Levi and Charlie Mullins. Go to smexpo.co.uk for free tickets. He'll be talking about risk-taking. And when we speak to him at his farm in Devon, that seems like a pretty good place to start.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I really do love talking about taking risks. In fact, I've written a book and it's called Jeopardy: The Danger of Playing It Safe. I think that a lot of people assume that playing it safe is the right thing to do. But you do not have much of a life if you think that the whole thing you've got to do is just to play it safe, because you never could really measure your ability until you push yourself to the boundaries of where you do make mistakes, because it's only by making mistakes that you actually learn. So if you look at your life and you celebrate the fact you haven't made a mistake in the last 4 or 5 years, that is a testament that you're slumming it in life. You're not living life, you're slumming it. The only way to know you are living life to the max is by the number of mistakes that you make. And therefore, every month you should sort of review your month and say, what mistakes did I make? What have I learned from that? Because that is telling me that I'm living and I'm continuously moving and pushing forward. So risks are essential just for living.
Wilfred, what was your biggest mistake?
I made tons of mistakes. I mean, trying to find out, tell you which was the biggest mistake, it's a bit like sort of being prejudiced to one of my children. The mistakes that are the things that I celebrate and I hold very dearly.
A lot of that starts with the brand name itself, doesn't it, Wilfred? Now, yours is the Black Farmer. That could have been a mistake, couldn't it?
Well, the reason I chose the Black Farmer as a brand name, well, let me tell you the story about how it came about. When I bought my farm down in Devon, all of my next door neighbors used to refer to me as the Black Farmer. And when I was thinking about launching this brand, I was scratching my head thinking, what is it I could call this brand and make sure that it stands out? And I said, you know what? I'm going to call it the Black Farmer, because all my neighbors were calling me that. There was no one else out there that could nick the idea because there's no black farmers. And I knew it had an edge to it. I knew that in this world of political correctness and people are not too sure about what the right thing you can say and you can't say, it was going to attract some degree of attention, and attention could be good or bad. But, and this is the important part of what I'm about to say, even I thought, well, Wilfred, I know that I'm somebody that likes to take risks, but I think what I should do is that I should research it first. So I went, got all the classic research done on the Black Farmer name, about what people would think about the Black Farmer name. And all the research came back and says, do not call it the Black Farmer, because people might be upset, they'll be offended, they'll see that it's derogatory, all that sort of stuff. And the lesson is this, and it's a lesson for everybody who lives their lives on research. Research will tell you what people were thinking yesterday. Research will tell you what people are thinking today. But research cannot tell you what people are thinking tomorrow. What you need to do is that you need to have enough courage with your idea to go for it, not expecting everybody to go with you, but to have the belief that people will eventually follow. And that's what you've got to do. It's what that saying, build it anyhow and they'll come. It's the same philosophy. And so, and it is about anybody running a business, or you if you leave PAYE to start your own business, you're taking a leap of faith. You're being courageous. And just to remember that when you are doing that, you're not going to have support. There's more people who will be finding reasons why you shouldn't be doing it. There'll be more people who are frightened for you. But if you're courageous, you've got to be prepared to go into the wilderness where there are no anchors, where there's no people who've done it before. And the only thing you could go with is your gut and your instinct and your courage to keep going forward. It may appear to be risky, but the only person that's going to be able to carry it through is your own will. And that will just changes people's perspective, because the Black Farmer brand is nearly coming up to its 20th year. And when I tell that story about how people felt 20 years ago, could you imagine where I'd be now if I decided, I don't know, I'd call myself the Afro-Caribbean farmer. It doesn't punch to it as a sort of Black Farmer does.
You are the Black Farmer, but you don't dress like a farmer, do you, Wilfred? You love a waistcoat, you love a hat.
Exactly. Because I think the whole thing about creating a brand, it's about creating an image, and an image that stands out. And one of the reasons I'm quite interested in coming along to the Expo later on this year, it's fantastic meeting people who want to go into business, who have just started on that journey of business, and to really help them focus on what are the important things. How do you build a brand? The biggest thing that I try and tell people is this, is that they will spend so much time focusing on the idea, making sure that the product is absolutely perfect. They'll put more energy and effort into perfecting the product. And don't get me wrong, you need to have a fantastic product, but it's no good having the best product in the world if you don't know how to market it. And any of the great brands that you look at and you admire, they will have someone who has been brilliant at marketing it. You take Apple as an example. You know, that is a classic example of that brand was built from being skilled at marketing. Take Virgin, that skilled at marketing. And what these people are selling, they're not selling a product. They're selling an idea. They're selling a dream. They're selling a vision. And whatever you do, whatever your product is, that is what it's got to do. It's got to sell something bigger than the product itself. And if you think that the core of my brand are sausages, well, I'm selling more than sausages. I'm selling an attitude, a mindset, a way of life, a way of thinking. And I don't think enough people put enough thought into understanding when you're building a brand. You've got to put as much thought into that as you do in actually coming up with the idea and coming up with a product.
Taking risks means acknowledging the potential of failure. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying, Wilfred. I mean, you came from poverty yourself. Are you not afraid that if you fail, that's where you'll end up?
Well, one of the gifts about being brought up in society's dustbin heap is that you know how being on the floor, what it's like. And, you know, I survived it. It ain't that bad. And I think that what people need to do is that they need to actually imagine what it would be like being on society's dustbin heap. And I think, look, I'm no superhuman. You know, I feel fearful as much as anyone. The difference is this between anybody doing their own thing and other people who are sort of captured by fear, is that I know that there's only one thing that is certain in life, and that is that life is uncertain. If COVID taught us anything, it tells us how uncertain life is. So those people who think that there is such thing as certainty, you know, they're fighting against the reality that certainty does not exist. So how do you live in an age where you just live with uncertainty? Well, you live with uncertainty by what I say is that you put your arms around uncertainty, i.e. when you're starting your business, you walk forward saying, I am going to come and meet situations where I do not know the answers. I will come to a situation where I will get it wrong. But I have the belief that whatever I meet on that journey, I will find a way. You will not know all the answers. If people are sitting down thinking they've got it all planned out, the amount of business plans that I've written and they've never, ever actually or worked to the business plan, is that you've got to work on the basis that things will change, things will go wrong. But if you've got the right mindset, things will come along that will help you get through it. And that's why you have to have belief and you have to have faith, and do not think that the only way to go forward is to have the answers now, because that is just impossible. So faith is really, really important. Everything that I have achieved has not, it's not been down to me. It's been down to other people going out of their way to give me a break. And if you put it out there, good people come. People come, they find you, they help you on your journey. But they're not going to be there if you don't put it out there, if you don't exude confidence, if you don't exude, this is what I will try and do at all costs. If you do that, then the right people will come to support you.
Is that what you're trying to do with the initiatives you have to bring more people into agriculture, particularly young people in urban areas? Is that what you're trying to do, to be that person that can go, I can support you to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think because my success in life is because people gave a kid from society's dustbin heap a break, left school without any qualifications, and good people in positions of power and influence put their neck on the line to say, actually, I'm going to give this guy an opportunity. And it's those guys that really I'm grateful for. And that's one of the reasons why I run something called the Hatchery, where people come to me with their ideas, and if the idea is good and they have the right attitude, I will also help them to fulfill their sort of dreams. It's a big passion of mine, because I know I would never be where I am today if I didn't have people like that who gave me a break.
Okay, off to the ads. While they're on, if you're interested in the Evening Standard's SME Expo, also have a look at the watercooler event. It's at the same place, XL London, same time, April 25th and 26th, and we'll have speakers from organisations like Deutsche Bank, Jaguar and Fujitsu talking about workplace culture, well-being and mental health. It's also free. Check out watercoolerevent.com.
It's one thing to give up time, but you've called for some organizations and people to give up land as well, haven't you?
Well, yeah, one of the things that I'm pretty cross about, in fact, is that if you want to go into farming, if you're from a non-farming background, the chances of you going into farming is impossible. And the reason why it is impossible, because everything is stacked against you. Because most farmers, they don't have to go out and buy land. It's handed down through the generations. Now, I'm not advocating that people who've had their land give it up to new people, but also there are a lot of corporate landowners. So the National Trust owns a lot of land. The Church of England owns a lot of land. Big universities. Most of these big institutions that we all pay our taxes into own a lot of land. And what these guys do is that they lease the land out to traditional families. And I'm saying to these people, actually, they have a bigger responsibility. They should say, look, a certain percentage of our land, let's say something like about 5% of the land, we should actively go out there and find new entrants, new people into farming to help and to encourage them so we could get some new blood into farming, because farming desperately needs new ideas, needs innovation, needs new people. But unless these people get access to land, it's always going to be a stumbling block. So I call upon these big institutions that it's their responsibility to start actually providing some of the land to new entrants.
And how important is it that land, or at least these initiatives to encourage people into farming, is diverse?
It's really, really important. I mean, diversity is an important thing to me, because look, as a farmer, you know that the rule of nature tells you that diversity is important. You have to rotate your crops. You don't have the same thing in the same field every year. You don't interbreed with your animals. Nature tells us that diversity is good. It just makes things stronger. So as human beings, we should be learning our lessons from nature. And actually, when you think about the foods, for example, that people from diverse communities eat, that could now be produced in this country. We now have the technology where they could be produced in this country. And you're talking about £1 billion worth of food that's imported that could be grown here. And they're not grown here because they don't have the farmers doing that. There is also business opportunities, but those opportunities means that these people need to get access to land.
You, of course, did buy your own farm after a pretty successful career in marketing and TV shows as well. And this was, as I understand it, a dream of yours from when you were 11 years old. Did the dream match reality for you?
I mean, I think the thing for me is this, is that I like to say to people, look, you have to have the audacity to dream and dream big. And I can remember when I was on my father's allotment at 11 years old, making a promise to myself that one day I would like to own my own farm. And I did that because I'm from a family of 11 and we were really, really poor. And a way of supplementing the family income was my father growing fruit and vegetables on his farm. And I absolutely loved being in that sort of environment. And there was a promise that I lodged into the back of my head that one day I would do whatever I can to get myself into a position to get a farm. Now, a lot of people have dreams, but they just talk it. They don't really put the effort you need to put in order to make it happen. In order to make your dreams come true, it takes hard work. And also, you've got to see it as a marathon. It took me 30 years from the day that I had my dream, 30 years to get into the position of buying my farm. In this sort of Instagram instant society that we live in, where people are looking for results tomorrow, lots of people are disappointed or they give up even before they started. Programs like The Apprentice, for example, that sort of encourage people to believe that all they need to do is find an investment and then that's the answer to all their praise, are just not the right sort of stuff to be telling people. Any successful person, be that a successful businessman, be that a successful athlete, they put a lot of work in, a lot of effort in, a lot of sacrifice in. And if you're not prepared to do that, don't even start on the journey. If you have to make a simple decision about your mates are out having a good time partying on a Saturday and you've got to sit down and do the books and you'd rather be out partying, you've got the wrong mindset, because those are the sacrifices you have to be prepared to make.
What I'm interested in is when you were 11, was it your idea to own a farm or work a farm? Because there's a difference there. Did you want to be the guy that runs it or the guy who's out there in the field?
Well, as you can see by the way that I dress, I don't actually run the farm. You know, I'm not a hands-on farmer. I've got somebody else sort of doing that. But it was important to me to own the farm. And I'll tell you why it was really important to me to own the farm, especially as an immigrant. I came to this country as part of the Windrush generation. I've always felt that if you are an immigrant, you don't really feel as though you belong. You only feel you belong when you've got a piece of England that you own. When I walk around the farm, you know, I own this part of England. That gives me a right of feeling that I belong here. And that was really, really important, because when my parents came over here, there was always with the belief that they were going to go back. There was always this sort of struggle that we've had as Black people to feel that as though we belong here. Now, there's nothing greater than owning part of the English countryside to feel as though you belong.
Yeah. Well, how happy were you when you identified and bought the land? It's in Devon, isn't it? How happy were you when you got that and picked it up and went, this is it, this is mine now, after 30 years?
Well, life is about completing the circle.
Yeah.
And joining the dots. And you could imagine I was just absolutely over the moon that I was able to actually fulfill my dream. But there was no second option. The other thing that you've got to do in life is take away second options, is that it was either succeed or nothing. And so, you know, I'd either die trying to achieve it or I would have achieved it. It was as simple as that.
There was a detour, though. You went into television initially, and then you launched your own marketing company. Why do that?
Well, on the climb, so but my first thing was to get out of poverty, get out of society's dustbin heap. And then again, in order to get into television, that was pretty audacious because I first of all, I left school at 16 without any qualifications. I could hardly read and write. So because I was as thick as they come, I joined the army. I didn't last long in the army because in those days, if you were a black guy with attitude, one or two things was going to happen. You were either going to get molded and you do as you're told, or you were going to get your head kicked in and you get kicked out of the army. So I got kicked out of the army. And the only thing that I got to my name is a dishonorable discharge. And then that's, I think, about 16. If you were a failure then, the only thing that was then open to you was catering, believe it or not. So catering was a profession where they thought, well, this guy is as thick as they come. Stick him in the kitchen, at least he could wash up dishes. And, now catering is a pretty glamorous profession. Back in my day, it wasn't. That's where all the stupid people went to. But luckily, I enjoyed working in various restaurants and hotels. Nowhere glamorous, just basically flipping burgers. But again, I've always had the courage to be audacious because I can remember that there used to be a fantastic program on the BBC that I used to love. And I remember announcing to my family and friends, you know what? I'm going to get a job in the BBC making documentaries, social documentaries. And everybody looked at me and said, I'm mad. But again, if you set your mind to something, it's amazing what you could achieve because I did all the classic stuff. I remember getting a copy of the Radio Times. I wrote to hundreds and hundreds of producer directors. No one actually ever wrote back to me. I then tried ringing them. Nobody would take my calls. And then at the time I was living in Birmingham and they used to have a big studios where they used to make a lot of the programs from. And I went up and I befriended the security guards who used to man the gates, letting people in and out of the building. And in those gates, there were sort of manual barriers that let people in and out. And they had their lovely warm huts that they didn't want to get out of. So I said to them, look, I'll open the gates for you for nothing. And they said, well, fine. So I did that for months, opening the gates, letting people in and out of the building. From there, I met the cleaners who were going in to clean the offices. So I said, can I come and clean the offices with you? So they said, yes. And I did that for nothing. And then I met this guy called Jock Gallagher. And I told him I want to get into television. He took me up to his office. He spoke to me for about an hour. And he says, look, you're not the sort of person that we employ in television because A, you don't have the education. B, you got a bit of an attitude problem. But he said, look, this is something he said he thought he might live to regret it, but he was going to take a punt. He said, I'll give you a job as a runner for 3 months and to see what happens. And that man giving me that break then started up a long career in television. So one of the things I hate in life is human resources, because human resources filter out people like me. They want to find someone that slots in. And to find someone that has the courage to give a guy from the gutter a break is, something I absolutely appreciate. My story is one of persistence, audacity, belief that you could be anything if you're prepared to do what it takes to do it.
So how much of what you're doing now is, in its own way, maybe a tribute to Jock Gallagher, which is a fine name, isn't it? Jock Gallagher, I love that name. How much of what you're doing now is at least inspired by what he did for you?
Yeah, well, him and another guy called Peter Bazalgette, and Peter Bazalgette is a big name in television. Yeah. Both those guys, took a bit of a ruffian, gave him a break. And what I do now is very much a testament to those guys, taking someone who was, totally looked as though it didn't fit the bill, gave them a break, and also protected me, because a lot of the people that were surrounded them just thought I was just totally a waste of space and I was totally useless. So, a lot of what I do now is in thank you to what they did for me.
That was Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones from The Black Farmer. For more interviews, news and analysis, go to standard.co.uk/business or pick up the Evening Standard newspaper. How to Be a CEO is back on Monday. Start your week with us.